Welcome to the Grants Management Seminar, which is a required element for qualifying your club to receive grants from the Rotary Foundation to fund your club's local and international projects. I am past District Governor Newman Aguiar, and I will be your guide during this session. This training is intended for the club presidents-elect and club designee for the grant programs. In order for your Rotary Club to be eligible to participate in the grant programs, your club must be qualified and current on prior grant reporting requirements. For your club to be qualified, each year the club's president-elect and one other club member must complete this training module, and you both must sign the club memorandum of understanding. The other qualification is that your club must be current on any prior reporting requirements related to grants in which your club is currently involved. During this session, we will review the grant process and provide an overview of global grants, global scholarships, district grants, and the Memorandum of Understanding. Rotary loves its acronyms. Here are a few acronyms that are important to remember. The Rotary Foundation requires that the district certify that we have trained our clubs. So we do this training and ask you to complete and acknowledge it by signing the Memorandum of Understanding, the MOU. As this training affects next year's projects, we ask the president-elect and one other club member to complete the training and sign the MOU. The Rotary Foundation has identified 7 areas of focus for those projects and activities requesting funding via global grants. Our district leadership also asks that district grants be aligned with these areas of focus. Each of the areas of focus has specific goals and policy statements. These documents are available on Rotary.org and on our district website, and you should familiarize yourself with them. Our district has a grants committee that reviews and evaluates all applications that originate in our clubs. That committee consists of the following people. Mary Cam from the Cary Rotary Club serves as the chairperson of the district's grants committee, and Christy Jones serves as the assistant chair. Mary is a wonderful resource for questions and information about grants and can guide you through the grant application process to ensure that your club's grants have the best chance of success. 2 types of grants are eligible for funding in District 7710: district grants and global grants. There are also global scholarships, which are a subset of global grants. We will talk about both district and global grants in some detail in this session. Let's look at a quick summary of district grants and global grants to see what is similar and why and where they are different. Looking at the left column, the district grants, note that they can be international. Indeed, within our district, we have had district grants which are international. But international projects must involve a host Rotary Club where the project is being done. The money has to be spent within the Rotary year. That is why we do this training so early. We request district grant applications to be submitted before your Rotary year even begins, because we want to maximize the time that your club has to use that money to complete your project. There is no foundation matching. See that third bullet down? What we have is DDF match. We will match up to $2,000 per participating club within our district per project. Now think about that for a moment. Some clubs get together with other clubs in our district and do fairly large grants, which may be significantly more than $4,000 total. Provided each club participating in the project receives a match of no more than $2,000, the project would be eligible to receive DDF funds to match the contribution of the participating clubs. This policy was set a few years ago and was intended to try to involve as many of our clubs as possible to participate in a district grant on its own or in collaboration with other clubs. The District Grants Committee must receive your district grant applications no later than May 15th. Why do we ask for your application so early? The district has to make an application for a block grant for the matching DDF from the Rotary Foundation. And to justify that request, we have to provide a list of projects that are going to comprise the total of the block grant. We want to do that as early as possible so that your club can receive the matching DDF to begin working on your projects. Note that all your district grant funded projects for next year must be completed by May 15, 2022, and the final reports are due to the District Grants Committee on or before May 31st, 2022. This timeline allows us to report back to the Rotary Foundation to confirm that all of our grant activity for the year has been completed. There may be times when the money that you asked for wasn't fully spent. In that instance, you must return those DDF so that we can in turn return them to the Rotary Foundation. The district doesn't lose those returned DDF funds. They roll over into our Global Grant DDF for the next Rotary year. That's a quick overview of district grants. Let us look at global grants. There are a couple of key characteristics that must be present for a global grant to be considered by the Rotary Foundation. One is, it must support at least one of the 7 areas of focus that we discussed earlier. Familiarizing yourself with the specific goals and policy statements for each focus area will increase your chances of submitting a successful global grant application. Secondly, it must involve a club in another district, and these grants are usually international. This means that these projects will usually involve a club in our district linking up with a club in another country. Global grants can be multi-year projects. In fact, they often are. However, interim progress reports must be submitted to the Rotary Foundation every 12 months until the final report is completed. With a global grant, some matching funds come from the World Fund in addition to DDF. There are a couple of other criteria to keep in mind. First, the total project budget must be at least $30,000, but cannot exceed $400,000. We will look at how the match works in more detail shortly, but what it means in real terms is that if your club submits a global grant, it must meet the minimum funding threshold of $30,000. Although we request that global grant applications are submitted to the Grants Committee early in the year, we do this more for planning purposes. Global grant applications are more complicated, and we recognize that it can take many months to pull one together, so they can be submitted at any time. Now let's take a closer look at global grants. Early on in your process of considering a project for funding as a global grant, consider how you will be able to measure the effectiveness of your global grant project. That means, have you considered the current conditions that your project plans to address? Will you be able to measure the changes that result from your project? How can we describe it in terms of qualitative and quantitative descriptors? Is it sustainable? Meaning, will the changes made by the project last after the project is completed? What are the elements of a successful global grant project? Here is what we have observed as qualities and characteristics of successful global grant projects. First of all, the project must meet a real community need. How do we know that? Well, we have to talk to that community, the representatives of that community. we've got to link with the local Rotary Club in the host country. Instead of assuming we know what they need, we have to ask them, how did you determine the community needs? Did you perform a needs analysis in consultation with the local community? A needs analysis is now required by the Rotary Foundation for all global grant applications. And without one, your global grant application will not be taken seriously. Next, it must support one of the 7 areas of focus. When completing your global grant application, select only one primary area of focus. If you select more than one area of focus, you will need to provide quantitative measures for each area of focus, and your application will have to be evaluated separately by each area of focus team at the Rotary Foundation to ensure that it meets the specific goals and policies for each of the areas of focus. One of the areas that global grants frequently run into problems is communications with the partners in the host country. Frequent and effective partner communications is critical for the success of a global grant project. One of the early clues indicating that you will have trouble executing a global grant project is when you see poor or unreliable communication with the partners. The partners have a vital role in executing the project, measuring the impact, and reporting back to the Rotary Foundation. Early breakdowns in communication, if you are not getting good feedback, if you are not getting answers to your questions, these clues should raise concerns about the likelihood of success for the project. Now we are back to measuring goals. Your project must have an implementation plan with measurable goals and outcomes. The best starting point for developing goals and outcomes is a good needs assessment. Now let's talk about sustainability. How will the project continue after the grant funds are spent? Why is the Rotary Foundation so insistent on sustainability? It's because several years ago, when the Rotary Foundation conducted an independent external assessment of our humanitarian projects, they found that many of the grants were fairly small. They cost a lot to manage, and they sometimes weren't that effective. They were feel-good, short-term, and they didn't have any long-term benefits. So when the grants process was changed to the current grant system, the Foundation insisted that there must be sustainability built into any global grant. And finally, the bottom bullet is a subtle change. Because when the system was changed, the Foundation gave more money back to the districts. But they also put the onus of stewardship on how those funds are used into our hands instead of being handled out of the Foundation. They still want to see reports. They still want to ask questions. But the primary responsibility for stewardship of the funding is ours and our clubs. Our district has set up a stewardship committee that monitors and evaluates the grants process annually to ensure good stewardship. So let's talk more about sustainability. After evaluating what the community really needs, the project proposal should provide long-term solutions. In other words, what are you building into the projects that will enable you and enable the beneficiaries of the project to say, you know, this is successful and can continue to be successful because we are doing A, B, C, and D to make it work. It should use appropriate materials and technology for the area in which the project is taking place. It should build essential skills within the community, so that when our group of experts leave, there exists local expertise to maintain the project and keep it going. There should be a reliable funding source for the future, so that the benefit can continue after the grant funding has ended. So if we build something that has a motor to run it, who is going to maintain that motor? Who provides the fuel for it? Are there local experts who can repair it? And lastly, as you've seen before, what measures can be built in to make sure that this project is and will continue to be successful over a long period? How do we identify a global grant partner? When working on a global grant project, we will be working with Rotarians in another part of the world. Where do we find them? How do we find the Rotarians that might have identified a local need in their community? There are several ways that happens. District governors-elect get many requests from Rotarians in other parts of the world, looking for partners with whom to collaborate. We are unique in the sense that our district is the home of the Duke UNC Rotary Peace Center. The Peace Fellows who study at the Peace Center must have come from another country. That puts them high on the list of individuals who have identified needs in their local communities. Also, when the Peace Fellows go off to do their applied field experience, they go to other countries and identify real needs that they can bring back to us. That has proved to be a very valuable source of potential global grants for us. Having said that, when you find a potential global grant partner, what is their interest in developing a partnership? Is their communication good? Since communication is key to a project's success, it is probably not a good idea to try and move forward with a global grant if you cannot get input and feedback from your global grant partner from the beginning. Here are some key factors to consider when identifying a global grant partner. What sort of resources? What sort of skill level? What knowledge is available between the members of your club and the partner club? You don't have to find all the necessary skills within your membership. You can always reach out and bring in outside experts to assist with specific technical skills that may be needed for the project. But you do have to have a base level of comfort that there is expertise to see the project through to completion. Funding. I will go into more detail on funding later. But it is important to note that your club will have to provide some level of funding for the global grant. The district is going to help. In fact, the district is going to subsidize your project quite significantly. But there will be a need for some funding from your club. An important detail of the global grant application is a breakdown of the various funding sources needed to cover the project budget. How much is cash from your club? How much is matching funds from the district? How much is matching funds from the World Fund? It is also important to identify what sorts of cooperating organizations or technical expertise may be relevant for the project that you have in mind. What is the application and approval process for global grants? Qualified clubs that are current on all their grant-related reporting requirements can complete the online global grant application available in the Grant Center on the Rotary website, rotary.org. The process of completing all information requirements for the online application is time-consuming and can take weeks, often months, to complete the draft submission. The submission can be done at any time during the Rotary year. Once the online draft application has been completed, Mary Cam, the Grants Committee Chair, will distribute the grant for review by the District Grants Committee members. The members will review the application and vote on whether to move the grant forward or send it back to the club with suggested changes to improve the grant. After approval by the District Grants Committee, the Grants Committee Chair secures the authorizations of the District Rotary Foundation Chair and the District Governor. At this time, the DDF are tagged to the grant, and it is important to note that if the district's DDF have already been expended, processing of the grant will be delayed until the next Rotary year. Similarly, leaders from other districts that are involved in the global grant will have to authorize the grant. Once all the authorizations are complete, the grant is automatically submitted to the Rotary Foundation for their review and approval or rejection. It is also important to note that once the grant application is authorized and submitted, the Grants Committee is no longer involved and all further communications are between the club and the Rotary Foundation. It is not a three-way process. It is a two-way negotiation between your club and the Rotary Foundation. That is why it is important to get all the relevant details sorted out before the application is authorized and submitted. At this time, you will be required to send the checks for the club's cash contribution to MaryCam. The Rotary Foundation will review the application and either approve, deny, or request additional information. You need to know that there are at least two sets of people who review your application. One would be a team that has knowledge about the location where the project is being implemented. The other team has expertise in the area of focus of the grant. For instance, if the grant's area of focus is water and sanitation, an expert in water and sanitation will review your application. If you choose more than one area of focus, then an expert in each area of focus will have to review your application. Therefore, it is preferable to choose one area of focus for a global grant. As stated earlier, the district is no longer involved in this process, and the communications are between the primary contact at the club and the Rotary Foundation. Once the application is approved, you will receive detailed instructions for opening bank accounts needed for the release of the funds so that implementation can begin. Let's take a closer look at how funding works for a global grant. Recall that the minimum total budget for a global grant is $30,000. In order to maximize the match from the World Fund and keep funds flowing into our annual fund, our district offers up to $16,667 in DDF to fund a global grant. When a global grant is funded with $16,667 of DDF, the World Fund will match it with 80%, and the grant will reach the $30,000 minimum threshold required for a global grant. To access the $16,667 of DDF, the district requires the club to make a cash contribution of 57.14% of the amount requested, or $9,524 if the entire $16,667 is requested, to the annual fund or AF share. In real terms, your club must make a contribution to AF share of 57.14% of the amount of DDF requested for a global grant. For example, if your club requests $10,000, your club must make a cash contribution of $5,714 to AF share. Here's the first of two examples. I'm going to take you through this fairly slowly because if you get the hang of it, the rest is fairly easy to follow. For the purpose of this example, I'm going to assume that there is a club called ABC Club in our district, and they want to do a global grant involving water and sanitation in Uruguay. The Uruguay district is District 4970. The host club will be the Libertad Club in Uruguay. The total budget for the project is $40,000. So how do we go about funding this project? First, the ABC Club has requested $16,667 of DDF from our district, District 7710, for this project. The World Fund will match 80% of those funds. If you move across from left to right, the fourth column has $16,667 under DDF and $13,333 under TRF. The ABC Club does not have to put any money directly into the grant. Instead, it will be required to send money to the annual fund, as we will see later. Over in Uruguay, their district will put in $5,000 in DDF, which will be matched by $4,000 from the World Fund. Now the Libertad Club is putting in $1,000 in cash that goes directly to the global grant. Clubs can contribute cash towards a global grant, but it will not be matched by the foundation. Therefore, you see $1,000 under the cash column for the Libertad Club and $0 under TRF. When we add those columns of cash, DDF, and TRF, we come to a total of $40,000, which is the total cost for the project. All we ask is that the ABC Club put in $9,524 into this year's annual fund, and that will release the $16,667 in DDF from our district. So here's a recap. If your club submitted this grant, you would have funded a $40,000 water and sanitation project for a contribution of $9,524 to the annual fund. Please note that you should not send your contribution to the annual fund directly to the Rotary Foundation. Instead, make your check in the amount of $9,524 payable to the Rotary Foundation. In the memo line, write Annual Fund, Rotary Year 2021-22 and mail it to Mary Cam. If more than one club in our district partnered on this grant with your club, then each club should make out a check to the Rotary Foundation in the amount corresponding to their portion of the contribution. The checks totaling $9,524 should be mailed to Mary Cam. Mary will then prepare the paperwork and send it to the Rotary Foundation, whereby each Rotary Club or Rotarian gets credited for Paul Harris Fellow points. If the grant amount requested exceeds $30,000, additional funds provided by the club will go directly to the global grant. If that happens, I'm going to show you an example of that in a moment. It will not be matched by TRF, and there will be an additional 5% administrative charge incurred to cover administrative costs by the Rotary Foundation. Let's take a look at an example of that scenario. For the purpose of this example, I'm going to assume that there is a club called XYZ Club in our district, and they want to do a global grant involving water and sanitation in Uruguay. The Uruguay district is District 4970. The host club will be the Libertad Club in Uruguay. The total budget for the project is $50,500. So let's get started. First, the XYZ Club has requested $16,667 of DDF from our district for this project. The World Fund will match 80% of those funds. As you can see, the table shows $16,667 under DDF and $13,333 under TRF. The XYZ Club makes a cash contribution of $1,500 that goes directly to the grant. TRF does not match cash contributions. Over in Uruguay, their district will put in $10,000 in DDF, which will be matched by $8,000 from the World Fund. The Libertad Club is putting in $1,000 that goes directly to the global grant. Remember, cash contributions are not matched. Therefore, you see $1,000 under the cash column for the Libertad Club and 0 under TRF. When we add those columns of cash, DDF, and TRF, we come to a total of $50,500, which is the total cost for the project. The real difference is for the XYZ Club, as you can see in the bottom section. Because the XYZ Club put in $1,500 in cash, they will be assessed a 5% maintenance fee of $75. So when you look at the total cash contribution required from the XYZ Club to fund this global grant, it adds up to $11,099. Remember, the 5% administrative fee can be waived if a Rotary donor-advised fund is used to pay for the cash contribution. Here's a quick recap of the scenario in example 2. The club is going to give $9,524 to AF share. The district will use $16,667 of available DDF. The Rotary Foundation will match 80% of our $16,667. The club is going to give an additional $1,500 straight to the global grant. Cash contributions are not matched, plus the club would have to pay an additional 5% administrative fee. The total cash contribution by the club is $11,099. Remember, no checks should be sent directly to the Rotary Foundation. Instead, all checks should be made out to the Rotary Foundation and mailed to Mary Cam for processing. In this example, your club would write 2 checks made out to the Rotary Foundation. One check would be in the amount of $9,524 and have annual fund RY 2021-22 written in the memo line. The other check would be in the amount of $1,575 and have the global grant number written in the memo line. For more information on global grants, you can visit our district website at rotary7710.org. Under the Rotary Foundation tab, click on Global Grants. Mary Cam is the chair of the Grants Committee. Her contact information is listed on the slide if you need to reach out to her for more information about global grants or the application process. Now let's take a look at global scholarships. What was previously called the Ambassadorial Scholarship Program has been replaced by the Global Scholarship Program. It is a pretty attractive and generous offering for students seeking post-secondary study at a university outside the United States. The scholarship is funded as a global grant with $16,667 of DDF, which is matched with $13,333 from the World Fund. No funding is required from the club sponsoring the outbound scholar. We have received a strong pool of applicants from our clubs over the past couple of years, but we have only one scholarship available each year, so the selection process is very competitive. There must be a Rotary Club in the country where the student is studying that agrees to participate in the grant by assisting the student. This is not financial assistance, but the logistical assistance of getting someone settled in and being available in case of need. The study must relate to one of Rotary's 7 areas of focus. Now that is important, but not too difficult to achieve given the broad areas that we have. For more information on the Global Scholarship application process, you can visit our district website at rotary7710.org. Under the Rotary Foundation tab, click on Global Scholarships. You will find a Global Scholarship flyer, scholarship manual, and the scholarship application. Chris Walker is the chair of the Global Scholarship Committee, His contact information is listed on the slide if you need to reach out to him for more information about the program. Your club should consider identifying potential candidates for the scholarship and receive completed applications by April 17th. Club should evaluate the applications and recommend strong candidates to the district scholarship committee by April 30th. The district scholarship committee will conduct interviews in May and select the global scholarship recipient. The global scholar will begin his or her study in the next scholastic year. We do receive requests for inbound global scholars due to the excellent universities in our area. Our responsibility is to identify a club to serve as the host club for the visiting scholar. A Rotarian from the host club serves as the primary contact and provides logistical support for the scholar. As you can see from the slide, duties of the host include transporting the student to and from the airport, assisting them with finding housing, and helping them to get settled. It is important for the host to connect the scholar with Rotary and include him or her in club events and social activities. Note that the club has no financial responsibilities. It is a wonderful opportunity to learn about other parts of the world and help someone from abroad. Now let's consider the district grant application and approval process. As it is with global grants, clubs that want to participate in district grants must be qualified and be current on their grant reporting requirements. Once you and one other member of your club complete this training and sign the MOU, your club will be qualified. Most clubs understand the importance of being current on their reporting requirements because now is the time that clubs have to report on grants that they received for this Rotary year. If they don't, Mary Cam follows up with the club president because we need to be complete with our reporting as a district so that we can take part in next year's district grants. You can submit district grant applications for your club by completing the application available on the district's website at rotary7710.org. Email the completed and signed applications to the committee chair, Mary Cam. Your club may submit applications for more than one project, but must number the applications in order of priority. Example number 1, number 2, number 3, etc. The district will make every effort to fund all Priority 1 projects with available DDF. After all Priority 1 projects are funded, if additional DDF is available, the Grants Committee will provide matching funds for lower priority applications. However, if the remaining DDF is insufficient to fully match all lower priority applications, the Grants Committee will prioritize applications for funding based on the impact of the project using the evaluation criteria outlined in the District 7710 Grants Program Policies for Rotary Year 2021-22. A copy of the District 7710 Grants Program Policies for Rotary Year 2021-22 is available on the district website. The district grant applications are reviewed by the Grants Committee when they come in, and they vote on whether the applications meet the criteria. The district then compiles a list of approved grants and creates a spending plan outlining how the DDF will be spent. We have to submit to the foundation a spending plan saying that we are going to use all the district designated funds that we are allowed to use. And we have made the decision to give as much DDF as we can back to our local clubs so they can do projects in our local communities. The spending plan is completed by the Grants Committee in June so that we can get it approved by the foundation and receive the funds by late July or early August. If the spending plan is approved by the Rotary Foundation, then the block grant is sent to our district, from which checks are issued to the clubs for their approved projects. The district foundation chair, who operates a bank account, with the district governor for countersigning, issues the checks out to the clubs. Now, this is what a successful district grant looks like. First, does it have a clear and concise definition of the project? Is it obvious from reading the application what its objectives are and how the club is going to achieve them? This is important. We are not interested in writing a check for somebody else to do the work. Rotarians must have a hands-on activity which is part of the grant, or it is not going to receive serious consideration. There should be a project committee at the club level consisting of 3 members. Let me do a sidebar here. Why would you do an international project with a district grant? Primarily because it did not meet the minimum project cost for global grants, which is $30,000. But there is still a need, and that need can be identified and satisfied by using a district grant. The club president of each club providing funds must sign off on the application for the grant. A final report will be required after the grant is completed. That will require very specific information about what was actually done, what dates, who attended, what expenditures, supported by invoices, checks, and receipts, etc. That report gets reviewed by the grants committee and may get audited by a group of past district governors to make sure that we are doing everything correctly. Here are the important dates regarding the district grants process for the upcoming Rotary year. Please be sure that your club submits all district grant applications to Mary Cam by May 15, 2021. This year we have extended the deadline for submission of applications due to late-breaking policy changes. By June 30, 2021, your club will be notified of the projects that were included in the spending plan. Checks for approved projects will be issued and distributed in mid-August. Be sure to complete the final report and submit it to Mary Cam as soon as the project has been completed. All projects must be completed no later than May 15, 2022, and all final reports submitted by May 31, 2022. For more information on district grants, you can visit our district website at rotary7710.org. Under the Rotary Foundation tab, click on District Grants. Mary Cam is the chair of the Grants Committee. Her contact information is listed on the slide if you need to reach out to her for more information about district grants or the application process. Let's talk a little bit about the Memorandum of Understanding. This document memorializes the agreement between your club and our district, outlining what measures your club will undertake to ensure proper implementation of global grant activities and management of Rotary Foundation global grant funds. By authorizing this document, your club is agreeing that it will comply with all foundation requirements. The MOU was sent to you via email and is available on the district website. To complete the club qualification process, you must print this document, and you and one other member of your club who has completed this training must sign it. Email the signed copy of the MOU to District Rotary Foundation Chair Donna Peffley or Grants Committee Chair Mary Cam. The MOU is a 2-page document that covers the terms of qualification and leadership responsibilities for qualification. It describes in detail how the finances must be managed, and that involves having separate accounts at the club level and not mingling those with other club events and monies that pass through. It talks about retaining documents. It talks about how those documents have to support the final report. And it talks about, and hopefully this never happens, The number 6 item is what happens if we have to try to deal with any misuse of grant funds. This is a pretty comprehensive document. You must give special attention to ensuring that the funds that are provided both by the foundation and by the district don't get used for anything other than the grant for which they apply. The account should be low or non-interest bearing. Any interest earned must be documented. The bottom line is at the end of the project activity, you are going to have to justify every dollar that was spent and every dollar that was received. And if there was some interest on it, then that goes into the pot of money that may have to be returned. Grant funds may not be deposited in investment accounts, and 2 signatories are required to move this money around, either on checks or withdrawals. It requires your club to build in some checks and balances into its process. These requirements are fairly nominal, and they are understandable. They are required because we want to be good stewards of our money. This concludes the Grants Management Seminar. Note that you can find all the information referenced in this training on our district website at rotary7710.org. If you have any questions, do not hesitate to contact District Rotary Foundation Chair Donna Peffley or Mary Kam. Remember to email the signed copy of the MOU to Grants Committee Chair Mary Kam or to Donna. Once they have received the signed copy of the MOU, your club will be certified to participate in the district and global grants for Rotary Year 2021-22. Thank you for completing the Grants Management Seminar.